Regional Medical Center. The difference in the life.
I'm Robert Bates. I'm a physician. I'm a urologist. I have just recently arrived in Jamestown to help the Jamestown Regional Medical Center start a urology service. I grew up in Chicago. I went to school in Michigan at Hope College in Holland, Michigan. Did a couple of years of graduate work at Yale. Went to the University of Chicago Medical School. Did my general surgery and urology training at the Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston. And then came back to Holland, Michigan, where Hope College is. And I was in practice there from January of 1982 up until last month, September of 2015. And I'm now relocated and looking forward to starting a new adventure here. I'm a urologist, which means that I treat patients with urologic diseases. So urologic diseases really means diseases of the kidney, diseases of the bladder, prostate, male reproductive diseases, kidney stones, urinary incontinence in men and women, erectile dysfunction, some fertility issues, the malignancies of the kidney, of the bladder, and the prostate. So it's kind of a broad spectrum. I've done a fair amount of pediatric work in my practice. I was kind of half trained to do pediatric urology, but most of it's adult urology, and it's the routine things that people deal with: kidney stones, urinary problems, urinary tract infections, kidney and bladder trauma. But it's a broad spectrum of both office work. Probably half of what a urologist does is office practice, and then the other half is surgical practice. So it's a nice balance for a surgical mind to have some office and then some surgical skills. That's changed a lot over the years. Nowadays, most of urology is minimally invasive. So whereas you used to make big incisions to carry out our surgical procedures, now a lot of it's done with telescope-like instruments, endoscopes, done with, in certain centers, robotic surgery, laparoscopic surgery. So the era of making big incisions to do surgery on urology patients is really a lot less than it used to be. Patients, for instance, with kidney stones, many of them have had kidney stones in the past, so they really know when they have another one. Many of those patients come through the emergency room because they have acute pain. Patients with blood in their urine, which is a sign of urologic disease. Patients with urinary tract infections, especially patients that have had them over and over again and they're not responding to treatment. Obviously, patients with urinary incontinence, they should seek out treatment. That's sometimes an impediment because, especially in women, they just think it comes with age, and it's something that they can't do anything about because their mother and their grandmother and how many generations back had it, and they just assume it's something that you get when you get older. Pain, difficulty urinating in older men with prostate problems, and sometimes the presentation is simply an abnormal blood test, and that's true a lot in men with tests for prostate cancer. They'll appear, they have no symptoms whatsoever, but they have an abnormal blood test. The classic blood test was a PSA blood test. So those are the sorts of things that we typically see. And sometimes it's an abnormality on an x-ray. So a patient is being treated for something, and an x-ray is done, a CAT scan or an ultrasound, and a asymptomatic condition is found, a kidney cancer, for instance, or kidney stones, bladders are not emptying well, all those sorts of things. Yeah, the famous question. I was going to be a neurologist, which is somebody that treats nerve diseases. And then in medical school I started to do general surgery and liked it a great deal. So when I went to Boston to start my general surgery practice, general surgery training, my first rotation was on the adult urology service. And I found that I really enjoyed the people and I enjoyed the discipline in the surgery. And then my second rotation, these are all 2-month rotations, was on pediatric surgery, and 3/4 of that was pediatric urology. So I had kind of a double dose of urology starting out. And I just kind of fell in love with that discipline. And again, the people. They were nice people to be with. and carried on through with that. My mother has always been, well, after I was going to be a neurologist, then I was going to be a cardiac surgeon. And my mother was absolutely confused because every time I came home, she couldn't tell the difference with a neurologist or urologist, and she was very confused about what I was going to do until finally things settled out. But mostly it was just liking the discipline, liking the balance between an office practice and a surgical practice, and again the discipline and the people I was working with, and that has carried through. Urologists generally are just really pretty happy people, and have a nice balance in their life, and so they're not. They're just nice to be around, and I've always enjoyed my colleagues. It always becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You decide to do something. One of my early mentors, when I was finishing, he said, you could have decided to be a dermatologist and probably been just as happy, but you decide to do this, and you make your happiness where you're at. So that's kind of how I ended up there. It's kind of, people always ask that question. I say, well, you want to deal with urine all the time? Well, I mean, there's other things I could deal with, or not nearly as pleasant as urine. So yes, I don't mind it at all. So I think there are different categories there. There's the whole category of cancer patients. Patients that have had a kidney cancer, or bladder cancer, or prostate cancer, or young men with testicular cancer, and being able to shepherd those people through the diagnosis, explaining the diagnosis, explaining the various treatment options, and then being able to do those treatments and see those patients, year after year after year. There's another group of people that are the stone patients, and because stones tend to be recurrent, you see these people back, and you try to work with them, what they can do for themselves to try to prevent more stones. That's always very rewarding, especially when you see people back and it's been 5 or 6 years and they haven't had a stone, and it's because of your medical management, it's made a difference in their lives. They're not burdened with stones as much. And more recently, dealing with women, especially with incontinence or pelvic floor dysfunction, we call it. And that's it's not a new area in urology, but it's an area in urology that's gotten a lot more attention recently. And so taking women, especially postmenopausal women who have had voiding difficulties and pelvic pain, and taking them through all the steps that need to be done to try to get that under control, and having a lot of them come back in and their symptoms are gone, and they're just so thankful, that sort of thing's been done. So those are those kinds of patients. In one respect, you have patients that don't have a life-threatening problem, but it's a life-changing problem. And then you have the patients that have life-threatening problems, and to shepherd them through that. And in truth, there's the category of patients that are at the end of their life, and they have a urologic disease that is the cause of the end of their life. It's a terminal disease, and to work with those patients and their families for end-of-life decisions and helping them to understand what the future holds, and not abandoning those patients and just say, well, I've done what I can, but try to bring them along, because I think that's important, that when you meet the patient, there's an end somewhere. I may not be around for the end, but if it's a near-term end, that you're with those people at the end, so that they know they've got somebody to turn to, somebody to talk to. Don't be shy or embarrassed. And I mean that seriously. I'm kidding, Lynn, but it's serious. I tell them, I've heard everything. There's almost nothing at my stage in life I haven't heard about or dealt with, and that they shouldn't assume that just because it's not a life-threatening problem, that nothing could be done about it. And at the minimum, if it's a problem that's a urologic problem, find out what the options are, work through those options, and a lot of patients, especially that have a lot of incontinence issues, if you make those patients 50% better, they're just thrilled, because their life is improved by that much. So again, mostly just tell them don't be embarrassed. There's no bad questions. There's no questions that should be embarrassing. The book should be open to explore everything. So that's really my best advice. Just to, it doesn't hurt to ask. It doesn't hurt to investigate. It doesn't hurt to look into options, and then decide what options you'd like to pursue. Well, obviously to provide the medical service, and something that's very technical. So if it's a kidney stone, I use this example all the time. If somebody has a kidney stone, I can show them the film. There's the stone. This is what we do to take care of it. Once the stone's gone, you're going to be fine. And then we deal with the medical management. So with those patients, it's a real technical issue. There are other patients where it's an educational issue. And I can take the stone patients again. Okay, now how are you going to prevent more of these stones? What are you and I, you the patient, me the doctor, going to try to do so that you're not in the hospital all the time dealing with kidney stones? And then that's kind of a broad approach to things, because it's lifestyle and health issues. So it's weight control and proper exercise and proper diet, and those sorts of things. I think that's important to not just it's a technical practice. That this is the technical aspects, and it's a broader thing. Who are you? What's the context of where you're coming from? Who's your primary care provider? Do you have questions about lifestyle issues that can impact your urologic condition? And my goal is to make patients comfortable. Treat the medical problems, but make them comfortable so that they walk out, their questions are answered, they're educated to the degree that I can educate them, so they understand that a lot of this stuff isn't a mystery. We don't have all the answers, but a lot of it's not a mystery. And we can sit down and talk about this is what we know and try to get the patients to understand why we're doing things, why this is happening, what happens next, what happens down the road. Well, first of all, I'll tell you that when I left Michigan, people would say, what are you going to do in North Dakota? And I said, well, first of all, it's an adventure, and I'm up for an adventure. And secondly, I said to people, I'm going to a virtually brand new hospital. It's a wonderful community, great place. And they don't have a urologist. They never had a urology service. And my job is to come here and build a urology practice and then help recruit somebody who will ultimately take my place. And when I look at the demographics, and in other words, where the hospitals are, where the population is, how far it is to the east, how far it is to the west, north and south, mostly east and west, it's a long ways to find a urologist. And urology is a fairly, it's perhaps not as important as orthopedics or ear, nose, and throat, but it can be a very, very busy specialty. And especially for things like, again, kidney stones. It's a long ways to travel to get your kidney stone treated. So, and it's a long ways to travel for those things that people might not think are really important, or, if I have to drive 90 miles to talk to somebody about this problem, which is not life-threatening, they may never seek out treatment for that. They may just live with it. Mm-hmm. And so just the proximity and to be able to talk to somebody, and I don't assume that myself or this hospital can deal with all the urologic problems that are in the world. But I can tell you that 80 to 85%, perhaps even 90% of the common urologic problems can be handled in a facility like this with ease. And so just to be able to drive a lot shorter distance for the diagnostic issues, the follow-up care, and the surgical management, and not have to go such a distance. I'm prejudiced, of course, because I'm a urologist, but I think that's invaluable if the hospital or medical center is going to build up a set of basic and basic specialty services. Urology is one of those that's got to be in there. If you go to a hospital and look at the OR schedule in most hospitals, there'll be as many urology cases as there are general surgery cases frequently. So it's a fully grown, fully developed, mature urology practice is a pretty busy practice, and there's a lot of urologic problems out there, and some of it's demographics. A lot of urology patients are older patients, and the population's getting older, and so as a consequence, it's kind of a growth industry. There's just a lot more people needing urologic care. Why not? Yeah. I mean, I'm very serious about that. Why not? first of all, I grew up in Chicago. So I was a city boy. Well, I had two grandfathers that were in Michigan. I spent all my summers on their farms. I love to be outdoors, whether it's just hiking. I do a lot of bird hunting. That brings me here. I have traveled through North Dakota many times and stopped to hunt on my way further west. I have one of my best friends is a fellow whose whole family for 3 generations in the seed business, and from Indiana. And I have traveled around with this friend. He's about my age, a very successful guy. And we go to Iowa and South Dakota and North Dakota and Minnesota and Wisconsin, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. We hunt and fish together, and he brings me around and meets all the seed people and the farmers. This is an environment in which I'm very comfortable. And this is a unique opportunity. There's a lot of places that want to have a urologist, and you come and you join a big group. Mm-hmm. I've done that, and I've built a practice and recruited a total of 5 partners over the years. And at this point in my life, I was looking for something to do for a defined period of time. I tell people I still got gas in the tank. I got one more thing I want to do. And this is a tremendous opportunity to come to a brand new facility. People are enthusiastic. It's a lovely community, and come and provide a service that's not here. And I don't want this to sound self-serving, but if I walk away in 3 years, or whatever, 4 years, 5 years, whatever, when I leave, if I leave here and there's an up and running urology practice that is providing basic urologic services to this community, 30 miles, 40 miles circle, that's a huge accomplishment, and I'll just be proud of myself. But more importantly, that will do something for this community and the people of this community. It goes way beyond just this medical center. Just to do something for this community, to put that up, and to recruit at some point some younger person to come in and take over that. I'd be thrilled. That'd be a great end to my career. I never wanted to be one of these older guys that's kind of in the back office and everybody's, when is he going to retire? And working 2 days a week or 3 days a week, and just kind of hanging on. What I really would like to do is accomplish what I've come here for, and walk away thinking that was a great piece of work. I was given a great opportunity. I'm adventure traveling, so we've done a lot of whitewater rafting around the world, and now we're taking our kids on these kinds of activities. So in June, I took 3 of my grandchildren on the Rogue River in Oregon for 4 nights, and it's whitewater rafting, not real challenging, but challenging enough. And we're able to camp along the side of the river, and this is one of the initial scenic and wild rivers in the United States. So it's just a wonderful, so those kinds of outdoor activities. I married my high school sweetheart. Long time ago. She was 16, I was 17. It's kind of like Sound of Music. Anyway, we went to high school together. We got married after, when she graduated from high school after my first year in college. We went to Hope College. We got married when I graduated from college, and she was in her about to go into her senior year of college. We moved to Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut. We kind of grew up together because we just left. I mean, she was 20, I was 21, and in those days, you went off and you called your family once a week because it was expensive, or you wrote letters. There was no texting. And so we spent 2 years there, and one of those years we were house parents at a boarding school. Came back, she worked at the University of Chicago in the economics department while I went to medical school, and at the end of medical school we had our first child. We have 3 kids who are now all in their 30s and 7 grandchildren. So I have my oldest son lives in Ann Arbor. He's an executive with Google, and he has 3 kids. My daughter, and the middle child, is in Tarpon Springs, Florida. Her husband's a chiropractor, and she has 3 girls. And then my youngest, Tim, is in Chicago. He has a little 2-year-old girl. He is a stay-at-home dad now. He had a construction company. He still does a little bit, but his wife's a lawyer in a big firm in Chicago, and so we try to get them all together once a year, which is difficult. But we've done that in Michigan, so now we're kind of exploring where we can do that in North Dakota. And both of my parents are deceased. Kathy's mom is still alive, and I've got a sister, and she comes from a much bigger family than I do. My family's a little smaller, but yeah, we have been active members in a church in Michigan, and we have when I lived in Holland, Michigan, it's a resort community. It's on Lake Michigan, so there's beaches and all that. It's a resort community. So I never thought that I had to buy a cottage because I lived in a resort community. So since we grew up in Chicago, we bought a condominium in Chicago about 15 years ago. So that was where we would go on weekends. We have some family there, but we just would enjoy the city. We have been spending most of our weekends in Chicago. We attend a called Fourth Presbyterian Church, is downtown Chicago, and Kathy has been on the session, or the ruling body there. She was a fundraiser all of her life for 17 years with a Christian school system in Holland, Michigan that's K through 12, had about 3,200 students. Did that, and then subsequent to that, she's done kind of interim jobs here and there in different places. Just finished one at a Christian camp that's in Michigan that she was on the board of directors, but she served as the interim development director. And so she's kind of, right now she's unpacking.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be her full-time job for a while, and sorting things out. But yeah. So we grew up together. We have been married got married in 1970, so it makes 45 years. Coming up on 46 next year, and happily married. Yeah, it's 7 grandchildren. I don't think there's any more on the way, but there could be surprises. I never know. But they range from 18 to 2, and I have 6 granddaughters and 1 grandson.
Wow.
So, which is great because the span of ages, the ones on the bottom, they don't buy any clothes. They just kind of filter their way down through the families. I spend a lot of time with boxes in the back of my car going from one place to another box of clothes for this granddaughter or whatever. Anyway,
Yeah,
that's the family. Again, if you mean by work, my philosophy is if you can't get up 95% of the day and look forward to going to work, get a different job. I mean, do something differently if it's within your capacity to do that. But I enjoy seeing the people and talking to people and getting to know them, and the intellectual part of it, finding out what's wrong or how do we follow up on this. The technical portion of doing the surgery, I like to do things with my hands, and the technical satisfaction of having a problem and fixing it and seeing the patient better afterwards. And then the emotional, the spiritual portion of taking care of patients who, again, may have life-threatening diseases or conditions that are going to significantly impact the quality of their life, and helping to do my part to get them through that, to get them readjusted to wherever else they're going to end up in the future, whether it's near term or long term. Mm-hmm. So it's rewarding work. Why would you not like to do it? Really?
You're absolutely right.
There's no reason to be unhappy.
Yeah.
And workplaces should be places that are fun. People want to come and learn something and do something and enjoy each other. And it shouldn't be places of conflict. So I don't like places of conflict. Either try to move on or try to reduce the conflict. And I've been incredibly fortunate that I've had great partners and a great work environment my whole life. And so again, when I visited here, I just had that feeling. And this is a place where people like Elaine stops, I said Brittany. Elaine meant me. I didn't mean Elaine. No, I mean, I'm sorry, Elaine. I meant Elaine. Elaine didn't mean me.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, she's, you know, just that kind of bubbly personality. Let's all pitch in. We're all here to do something and try to get the care done. And that starts from the bottom to the top. And I don't like to say the bottom to the top. Just different people with different skill sets, and they're kind of working to provide the entire package to whoever walks in the door. I like to think that I can make a contact, a personal contact with a patient, so that they feel comfortable, and they and then again, as I said earlier, my job is to help them to understand what's going on here. It's not a mystery, and if they understand what their disease process is, what the treatment is, what the expected outcomes are, that is what everybody should do. Whether you're a urologist or a pediatrician or an internist, it doesn't make any difference. And that's what, if I'm a mentor to younger physicians, that's what I'd like them to learn. It's not the technical stuff. You really can learn that anywhere. But it's the ability to make a bond, a connection with the person that's looking to you as somebody that's going to help them out. And because patients are incredibly vulnerable. They're coming with whether it's a real or perceived problem. Maybe it's small, maybe it's major, but to them it's all the same. It's my problem and I need help with this. And coming to a professional, and you should act like a professional, which doesn't mean you're cold and withdrawn and just doing the technical portion of it. It's actually making that contact, because the medical problems are only a portion of that relationship that you should have with the patient. So I'd like to think that is my strong one. I won't say that I'm the only person, but a strong one.
Jamestown Regional Medical Center.